In this video, we're going to take this photograph and we're going to turn it into a simulated painting, complete with realistic looking brushstrokes and a stylized look here. I'm going to zoom in so you can kind of get an idea of what the end result that we're shooting for is going to look like. So again, this is the original and this is the painting zoomed in. I'll zoom out so you can get another look at it. So let's go ahead and get started. There's a link in the description to the stock photo site where you can get this image if you want to follow along. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to take the crop tool and crop this down to a portrait. Alright, and I want to make sure delete cropped pixels is checked for this, so I'm going to hit OK. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this background layer photo. Okay, I'm going to duplicate the layer and I want to name it as I duplicate it, so I'm going to hit Option Command J. I'm going to call this one Test. So we're going to take this test layer right into Topaz Studio 2, and I'm just going to show you with a quick preset. So I'm going to go to Filter, Topaz Studio 2, and on in. So this is going to be the first in a series of videos working through Topaz Studio 2 and specifically the Impressions filter. So we're going to go into Add Look, and we're going to use the Van Gogh filter, the Van Gogh look. So if I click on Impressions, that takes you in here. And in this filter you have all kinds of controls for different types of brush strokes, number of strokes, which we'll talk about more, brush size, volume, all these controls. I'm not going to go into these controls in this video. I am going to do a series of videos later and we'll go into those in a lot more detail. For this one, we're really just going to work on this selection of number of strokes. But before we move on, I just want to point out one thing real quick. I'm going to lower the brush size down. And you can see all these little white spots. Basically what you're seeing there is the white background. If I scroll down to texture, you can see here background type solid. You can change the color. The other option is original. I generally like to just click on original, and what that does is it puts the photo behind the painting. That way any gaps between brush strokes you don't really notice as much. Personally, I wish they had set that as the default, but the workaround that I've come up with is to go ahead and make that adjustment and then save it as a look. So I'm going to go up here to the top right, and click Save Look. I'm going to name this one One Van Gogh. Oops. I've already done that, so I'm going to click Cancel, but otherwise you click OK. So what I'm going to do here is get rid of this layer, go to Add Look, and we'll see that one Van Gogh right at the top there. And you can see that by default doesn't have those gaps because it's got the photo behind it. So that's the preset we're going to be using for the rest of this video. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and accept that and take it back into Photoshop. So you can see how quickly, with just a couple of clicks, we went from the photo to this kind of quasi Van Gogh style painting. Honestly, for just a few clicks using a preset, I think that looks pretty good for, for what it is. But in this video, this is going to kind of do, like I said, a basic workflow and kind of do just a little bit more so we have a little more control over it. But I just wanted you to see with this test layer how easily you can start getting some kind of nice results. So I'm going to go ahead and disable that layer. Now we're going to do a little bit of testing here. So we're going to do another layer and call it contrast. I'm going to hit Option Command J, call that contrast. I'm going to take this contrast layer into Topaz Studio. I've set a keyboard shortcut for this of Command Control T. So I'll be using that from now on in the video, but I'm going to go ahead and take that in. We go to Add Look, select one Van Gogh that we just worked on. Now I'm going to go to Add Filter. What we're going to use here is Precision Contrast. So once I've applied that, if I grab on the left side here on the layer stack, I can drag it down below the Van Gogh setting. So what we can do, basically, like layers in Photoshop, we've got the base Photoshop image and then the contrast on top, and then the painting happens on top of the contrast. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and bump up the low, and you can see it does the work to calculate the brush strokes differently with a different image underneath. I like what it did with the low. I'm going to give it a little bit of medium. Okay, that looks pretty good. You basically lose a lot of contrast often when you take it into for the simulated brush strokes. So we're going to go ahead and add some more back in here. I'm going to bump this medium contrast up a little bit more. I feel like that's a little too much. The edges of the hair got darker than I like, so I'm going to bring that down just a little hair, just a little bit. Okay. So of course, with any kind of digital image manipulation, you could spend forever making it perfect, but we're just going to kind of make a couple little clicks here just for the sake of keeping this video brief. So I'll say that for this example, I'll say I'm happy with that, and we'll work on it from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this contrast layer, but I'm going to go ahead and delete the painting layer, and then I'll take this layer with the upped contrast back into Photoshop. Alright, so we've got our photo layer, our contrast layer, and we're going to build our painting layers on top of contrast. So I've created an action where basically I duplicate the layer 3 times and name them painting high, painting medium, and painting low. So I'll go ahead and run that action here just to save a little time. Alright, so with the painting high layer active, we're going to go into Topaz. I'm going to go to Add Look. Again, I'm going to use this preset. And the only adjustment I'm going to make here is this part with the number of strokes. So I'm going to click on High. Generally, I don't really like what it does with this one. It gives you a little too many brush strokes. I don't like what it did with the background. It makes it a little busy. The hand looks kind of weird, but I do like that it gave us more detailed brush strokes around the eyes and some of the details of the face. So we're going to go ahead and accept that, take it back into Photoshop. I'm going to create a layer mask on that, and I want an inverted mask, so I'm going to hold down the Command key, the Option key, and hit the Add Layer Mask, so that gives us a black mask. We'll come back and work on that later. I'm going to highlight the medium layer, go into Topaz. Go to Add Look, use our one Van Gogh. So with this one, we want to use number of strokes medium, which it defaults to. So I'm going to go ahead and click Accept. Do the same thing with the inverted mask. Option, click the Add Layer Mask button. I'm going to go to Painting Low, take that into Topaz Studio, Add Look, one Van Gogh, and as you guessed it, we're going to do number of strokes low. So this one's going to give us, I like what that does for the background, gives us some looser brush strokes, and that's one of the things that this workflow does well. It allows you to kind of focus the viewer's eyes to the areas of higher contrast. So what we're going to do from here is build on top of this layer. I'm going to highlight the painting medium layer mask. I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. Got a fairly soft round brush. And what I'm going to do is kind of paint in some of the medium number of strokes on top of the low number of strokes. So if you look right here, it did kind of some sloppy brushwork there. So with the color palette on white, You can just hit the X key to toggle back and forth. So I want to paint with white on the layer mask, and you can see I can just brush out, just mask out some of these more broad strokes. I tend to like to do sort of light little strokes around there, kind of clean up the low level more towards medium. Right now I'm using a mouse for this. Of course, you can always use a tablet. So one of the things I'll kind of work through, I like to leave some of the sloppy brush strokes to give it a more realistic look. With some spots where you need to kind of see what's going on, I'll clean those up. Like around this thumb, for example, and the chin in general, I want to get a little more definition around those. Okay. These ears look pretty rough. What I want to do is retain some of the loose brush strokes while still making the image, look like the person that we're working on. I like what it did up here on the forehead, but it's maybe a little too rough, so I'm going to make a couple of little adjustments in there. And then we'll move on to the painting high layer. I generally like to use this one, reserve it for like the details around the eyes. So like a word of warning, if you get too just hog wild in, painting all over this mask, and you end up and just disable the mask, you can see now it just starts to look like a photo that's been sort of fiddled around with in Photoshop, which ultimately is what it is, but we're trying to give it a more of a actual painting look. Oops. What am I doing here? Okay. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is you want to be careful with the painting high layer. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Paint with white, and you can see what it's doing, bringing in, kind of cleaning up, making those eyes look more like eyes and less like blotches of paint. I'll often use that just for the details of the face, around the mouth a little bit. So it's important to zoom out and zoom in as you go. One of the things zooming out can tell you, oh, you've gone a little too far, it's starting to look like a photograph again. You can also catch things like this cheek looks a little strange, so I'm going to come in and kind of clean that. Actually, I'm going to use that on the medium level. Kind of clean that up a little bit. More definition around that finger. And you could go on and on, but for now, I'm going to say, for doing it kind of quick, that I'm pretty happy with this one. Now, one of the things, kind of a little bit of extra credit here. If I zoom into the eyes, you can see I don't really like what it does sometimes with the more detailed things. It almost looks as though there's some fairly translucent paint strokes over the eyes. So I'm going to do a little thing here. I'm going to take this, first I'm going to zoom out to full screen. I'm going to take our base layer, the contrast one, and I'm going to duplicate it into a new document. So I'm going to go ahead on to the right side of it here. I'm going to right click, duplicate layer, document, new. So that's brought us over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to upsample it to a higher DPI. So I'll go to image size. So we're at 72 DPI. I'm going to take it up to 300. And just a quick word on the DPI. The resolution can have a lot of impact on the paint strokes in impressions. So I generally like to work at a higher DPI to get a better quality image. But you sometimes have to sort of experiment with the size of the brush strokes and whatnot. I chose to keep this at 72 dpi just to make this video kind of quick. So now I've upsized it here. I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to call it eyes. And then I'm basically just going to go right into Topaz with this one. Now, if you're new to Topaz Studio or you haven't used it before, I've got a link in the description that'll take you right to Topaz Labs where you can purchase the software. It is an affiliate link. I do get a small commission if you buy the software, but it doesn't cost you anything more. And I've got a coupon code you can enter in Design DLW, and that'll save you 15%. So that's kind of cool. So on this one, we're going to go to Add Look. We're going to do that one Van Gogh. I'm going to apply that, and you'll see it's going to look quite a bit different than it has in the previous parts of the video because of the higher resolution. So if I zoom in here, you can see it really has done quite a different job on those eyes. I'm actually going to take it to the high number of strokes. Alright, so I like what it did there. I'm going to go back and forth. So we're going to take this high strokes. I'm going to go ahead and hit accept. Alright, now that we're back in Photoshop, there's a step that's very important that I sometimes forget to do. So now we want to take it back down in size. So I'm going to go to image, image size. We want to change the resolution back to 72. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the move tool. I'm going to grab this layer, this eyes layer. I'm going to take it into the other document by dragging it up here and drop it down in the middle. And move it up just below the test layer. I want to line it up here. I want to make sure under view that snap is checked. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. I'm going to grab that. And I'm going to look for those pink lines. Now I know it's lined up. I'm going to create an inverted layer mask. Option click the mask. So if I zoom in tight on these eyes, you'll see what we get here. I'm going to go back to brush. I'm going to decrease the size of my brush. And you'll see you can kind of paint in those details. I like to do that a lot of times just on the pupils and irises, so you don't have that sort of washed out eyeball, blank eye, no soul look. The other thing, now that we've got this layer, we can use it if there's anything that you couldn't quite clean up with the painting high level. This will often give you the chance to kind of get any brush strokes that were kind of not, that you weren't real crazy about. Sometimes little things like this below the ear, I can sort of clean those spots up a little bit. I might even try to get that out. But yeah, sometimes I'll even, with this eyes layer, lower the opacity and see once it's starting to look too much like a photograph. I want to kind of retain that painting level and go about 60, 65 or so. Pretty happy with that. Okay, so yeah, we're just going to kind of zoom out from a distance, zoom in real close, and you can see, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And you can see it's a pretty basic workflow. Again, I'm going to have some more videos coming along going more in depth into Topaz Studios and simulated digital painting and all that sort of stuff. So if you found this video helpful, I would appreciate it if you subscribe, hit the like button, ring the bell, all that sort of stuff. And I'll look forward to working with you in the next video. Thanks.